and it's also a good space that if it's something you've debated and you're not sure on, then this is also going to be super helpful. So yeah, should we just get stuck in? Does anyone have, if you are here, do you have questions? I have multiple cameras filming because I'm going to upload this into the Homeschool Freedom portal. It will stay as a live for a few days and then I'll take it down. So it'll go into the portal for everyone there. Hello, hello, hello. Okay, I'm going to chat about homeschooling and curriculums and all of those things. And you know what? It's great, even if you're in school, to realize that a lot of the rules that they've created don't even have a lot behind them. And I unpack all of this way deeper in my course, Homeschool Freedom, because I think there's so much misinformation. So when people decide to homeschool, a lot of the time the information they collect comes from homeschool groups on Facebook or teachers in a classroom. And I'll be so honest, because that is where I gathered a lot of information initially. The teachers in a classroom actually have no idea about homeschooling because you don't learn it in your degree, you don't do any training on homeschooling, and most teachers wouldn't even know the very, very basic legislation, not even a school principal. All a school principal will actually know about homeschooling is like what you have to do to legally move yourself over into the homeschool space rather than their school space, right? That's all, and a lot of the time a principal doesn't even know what to do with that. So seeking information from those people is going to be very unhelpful. And I definitely asked questions of those people when I first decided to homeschool, and it was really the wrong move because it makes you feel unsteady and uncertain, because all you do is get other people's kind of crappy ideas about homeschool, and teachers actually just have no knowledge at all of home education unless they're home educating themselves, right? So then what parents typically do is turn to Facebook groups, and it's the same with people who come to Bali. There is so many Bali Facebook groups, right? It's kind of crazy. And if I go in them, the volume of misinformation or misinterpreted information or just like general collective of wrong knowledge is ginormous. And the same thing is true for home education and for the Facebook groups. So it's predominantly women in there. Yes, there's dads, but there's just hundreds of thousands of women who are homeschooling, who share their thoughts and ideas about what is right and what is wrong. And when we left for Bali, I actually removed myself from all of the homeschooling Facebook groups, mostly because I was noticing a very strong undertone from just a handful of people who had decided what was right and what was wrong. And they were sharing a lot of stuff that just wasn't true or wasn't real in terms of legislation or law. A lot of people think that when you're assigned a moderator or someone who comes out and assesses you while you're homeschooling, which every area has some form of, there was a lot of misinformation for a long time about those people also doing welfare checks, and that they were checking whether like your children were safe and were they at risk of abuse and things like that. And in the state that I was in, that definitely wasn't part of what their check involved. And there was just a lot of misinformation spinning around. And I think it caused a lot of fear and a lot of disruption for many, many mums, thinking that they had to have some perfect home when someone came to check on their home education. So there's a lot of bullshit. There's a lot of bullshit out there. So a lot of the time what you find will happen is someone will decide to take their kids out of school, and the teacher will have said to them, like, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to teach them? What are you going to follow? And all of a sudden this gets interpreted into like, oh, so I have to be doing some kind of curriculum, or I have to have some kind of rule book that I'm following to teach my kids. And for most places, that's not actually true. Curriculum very rarely comes into legislation or law. Curriculum is usually just a philosophical guiding point, okay? I break this down so deeply in Homeschool Freedom because it's so misinterpreted. Everyone thinks that a curriculum is like a teaching point, but really a curriculum is a philosophy of learning, and you don't actually need a step-by-step to understand a philosophy. And so philosophy can come from religion, right? Philosophy can come from Waldorf/Steiner. Philosophy can come from Montessori. Everyone knows Maria Montessori style education. There's so many ways to derive that type of influence into our children. Some people pull their children out of school because they want to give them a more religious upbringing, which is absolutely fine. It's following philosophy, okay? And that is essentially what curriculums are. They all have an underpinning philosophy. So even when, even NDIS, okay, that has an underpinning philosophy behind it. It has various things where they've decided that funding is allocated in a specific way because of research or because of information, okay? And it's not the same as a curriculum, but it's very much based, things are decided upon from research or ideas or concepts that people have come up with, okay? So what mums have this tendency to do is like go out and like research on the internet, trying to find the best curriculum for their kids when they want to homeschool them. And they turn it into this monstrosity before they've even actually pulled their kids out. They've like stressed themselves out about how they're going to teach their kids, okay? And it's not actually that complicated. And part of the problem is there's no point doing this before you take your kids out of school. It's better a couple of months after you've taken your kids out of school, because your kids will significantly change once you take them out of school. When I say significantly, they will do like a 360 turnaround. And at first, they are going to be so tired. I can remember when I pulled my big kids out of school. They were in school before. When I pulled them out of school, they slept until 9 a.m. like for months and months and months. I would plan all these things that we would need to do. Feel so silly now because I was like, I just want to control everything, and they just wanted to sleep. It took them months to really start to ever get up early-ish anymore. I mean, even now my kids would sleep till 7 or 8, except some days they have classes at 7, so they will get up a bit before that. They'll get up at 6:45 and do their 7 a.m. class. But I actually was like, are they broken? And I can remember my moderator coming to visit me at home, and I was like, all I want to do is sleep and eat. And she was like, yeah, that's really normal. That takes like 6 months to a year to go away. And I think the hardest part of homeschooling always is that the mum, or me, I had to institutionalize myself. Like I had to change my ideas and my beliefs about how children learn and what they learn and when they learn it. And I had to change them really fast because I really wanted one of my kids to be reading better than what they were when I pulled them out of school. Oh, I feel so stupid even saying it now. I really wanted the level to be higher, and I was very dissatisfied with what had been taught to her and how I wanted it to be different. And I knew she was really smart and I knew she had a lot of capacity, but she had so much fucking trauma. She basically like refused to read, and it was fucked. That was like my initiation into realizing that learning really does just like evolve very much on its own if a child feels loved and supported. So if a child feels good most of the time, learning will happen. And she did not feel good when I forced her to try and read out loud. Now, in school, you're always taught to read out loud first. It's a very natural way that they see the progression, because they think if you can read out loud, you can read internally. What happened with all of my kids though is that they all learnt to read internally before they could read out loud. So they all did it in the opposite way. And I didn't want it to happen that way. I was like, that's not how it's supposed to go. And so I would sit with her and make it, I can actually still feel the fucked up stress that I created. I would sit with her with these boring ass spot books or whatever, because I didn't do readers, and ask her to read like picture books out loud, and she would just refuse. And actually, I think she could read internally so much earlier than I realized, but she was so pissed with me and so against what I was trying to make her do. I mean, this is the whole like female to female thing, that she just refused. I can remember we were in the car one day and she was reading all the signs as we were like driving. And I was like, can you read? She's like, yeah, I've been able to read for ages, but I just don't want you to know because I don't want to talk to you about it. So yeah, that was that. She made that very clear that I was not going to teach her to read. She was going to decide how she would do it on her own. And now, last year, she read 250 books. I've just banned my kids from reading between 7 and 12:30. That kind of feels stupid as a mum, like, and unless you're a homeschooler, you probably won't understand this, but I have banned my kids from reading in the mornings because I'm sick of them reading all the time. It's so boring. Like, I'm like, can we just do some other things? Because even if I said to them, well, you have to be reading an encyclopedia or you have to be reading a science textbook, they would just sit and read that. They would happily spend their whole lives reading. So I've just banned reading for the mornings for now. They can read when they wake up, and then they have to give me their Kindles because I've had enough. And only a homeschool mum would probably fully understand this, because once your kids are reading, they will happily spend, like, you know, my girls will lay out in the sun reading for hours and hours every day. So when you're choosing a curriculum, what you have to actually understand is A, do you want to provide resources from a curriculum or do you want to find things of your own? And B, what philosophy is important to you? And I go really deep on this in the Homeschool Freedom course, because this is the part where I know people will make or break or fail or whatever, is because there's a very big difference between just deciding to pull your kids out of school and knowing what you're going to actually do with them once you've pulled them out of school. Because a lot of people are like, well, I'll just get them to do, there's like these online programs like Yuka and blah, blah, blah. But a lot of that's just the same shit as school, and kids just don't want to do it. Then they know, they're just like, this is dumb and this is a waste of my time. So deciding, you know, do I want to be more holistically based? Do I want to be more Catholic based? Do I want to be, follow in the footsteps of Montessori, right? What is it that I actually want to apply to my children, and what is important to me? How do I want my days to look? What do I want my house to feel like? You know, do I want my house to feel like my kids sitting in front of a computer completing work and then it being over? Like, is that what's going to make us all feel better when we homeschool? So you need to, if that's not what you want for your kids, then you don't choose something like Yuka where you do have to sit in front of a computer and complete work. You're going to choose something different. Something that I have always done is most of the curriculums that I have chosen or gone with have been from the US. I have just felt like there's way more options. They are usually quite expensive, but I see them all as an investment, meaning one of my kids will use it and then obviously some more of my kids will use it after. And so I will always research in the US now before I'll go on to anything to do with a Australian kind of curriculums, even though we are from Australia. I think there's loads of people in the US who create really cool things that are really different. My kids have heavily used Outschool, which is an online education platform with, I don't even know how many teachers they'd have on there. I'm going to guess like hundreds, if not thousands of different teachers on there. And you can go and choose like subjects, or you can do full curriculums on there in varying philosophies. Some will be nature-based, some will be play-based. It depends on the age of your kids. And I just feel like it transfers across into the way I desire my children to be raised. Even doing like some American history and things like that is just really fun for them to do. So they have done full-time curriculums through there, and then they've done lots of different classes through there as well. There are so many online options. There are people who teach things just through Facebook groups. The options are really endless, but the most important thing is to know like how you want your children to feel, how you want your day to feel. Like if you're needing to work for 4 to 5 hours every day, what is your plan for your kids over that time? And like, where do you want them to be? Do you want them to be in front of a computer? Do you want them to have physical books? Like, what is it that you actually want? And when you start to break that down for yourself, it just gets way easier to know and choose and decide what to do. So what everyone does is they're going in blind and just Googling curriculums and going, well, maybe that one, or well, maybe that one. And so what I teach you in Homeschool Freedom is how to actually work out what it is that you want. I've got a worksheet for you to fill out, and just like things for you to actually unpack how you want this to go. Then we have the topic, no one's asked about this, so maybe you guys don't really know about it, but unschooling is definitely more popular for people who travel. And so obviously we are exposed to lots of people who travel. Unschooling and world schooling always come up in these types of areas, and that is more of the thought process. So unschooling is where you allow your children just to learn on their own, and you trust and know that they will make choices that create like the outcomes that you're hoping your children will create, like the type of things that they'll know by the time they're an adult, right? Then you have world schooling, where people travel a lot as a form of education. So their children are learning as they go, and people are traveling. Essentially, sometimes they're traveling full-time, or sometimes they're traveling 6 months of the year. There is a lot of people who world school now, a lot more than I probably realized. Yeah, we're not probably in the world schooling sort of way, mostly because I don't want to travel full-time. It's not my thing. We traveled a lot at the beginning of when we moved to Bali, and I find it really hard to work and travel. Even if I'm only working a little bit, I still find it really hard because there's so much cool stuff to do. Yeah, and it's a bit exhausting. I do find the like trying to find where to buy groceries and stuff, just I'm probably better now. Actually, I'd say I'm pretty good at it now, but at first I was not great at it. So unschooling is just of the theory that children will learn without a designated curriculum. It's still just a philosophy. And I meet a lot of unschoolers who still try and do proper maths with their kids, proper reading and writing. So the term, I think, is very loosely used. Like it's only some people are actually fully unschooling. I would say that to a certain extent my kids are unschooled because they're not registered with anything anymore, because once you leave Australia you can't legally be registered anymore. Now a lot of people still do stay registered. They'll like leave their address as their parents or do things like whatever, but in technical terms you don't have a right to their education systems. So we don't actually live in Australia anymore. So I also don't really want my kids to be influenced by Australian education systems because I think they're not so great. They're not what I would have hoped they would be, you know? I feel like exposing them to different curriculums is more valuable to them, but it depends on your viewpoints and what you desire and how you want your children raised. So in terms of actually choosing and deciding, never choose or decide on how you're going to homeschool your kids before they've left school. If your kids are still in school, you will send yourself insane trying to decide on curriculums or things like that, because it's so frustrating, and there's not a lot of, you don't actually know how your children learn well enough until they've been out of school for a good couple of months. And so when they leave school, ideally what you're doing is you're letting them rest, you're letting them eat well, and you're providing like opportunities. So you're doing things like just having a time where you're all sitting around reading every day. It doesn't even matter what age your kids are. You're having time where you've spent time outside. So you kind of create some kind of fluid movement within your day, but you're not holding them to any kind of strict routine, because making everyone stressed out when you first leave school is just not how we want it to be, you know? That was the thing as well. I knew so deeply that in the 2 hours I spent stressing getting my kids to school, I found it very stressful just getting my kids to school. All the other aspects I was kind of fine with. And I think everyone's different. Like, I was not bothered by the letters. I was not bothered by the washing. I was not bothered by the lunch boxes. Like, none of that really stressed me out. But getting them to school, I found so stressful. And I just had this feeling inside that just kept repeating. And everyone's going to have it different. Is that rain? Ah, it is rain. Sheesh. Is that me just saying it's dry season and it's freaking raining again? In the 2 hours I spent taking them to school and getting them ready, I would be able to cover curriculum. I was just so certain of that inside. And I was so right. Like, I mean, now I definitely don't spend 2 hours with them on a curriculum basis, because they're enrolled in so many different things and they're off doing those all the time. A lot of their classes are early morning and later in the evening, because that is US times that work for us. So they have like full-time classes at 7 a.m. and then they sometimes do some other classes in the evenings. So yeah, if you watch the replay of this, just say replay and ask any questions that you desire. Ask the burning questions, because it helps other people as well. So a lot of people have asked me about curriculums, and a lot of people have asked me about like how your day is structured. But I do believe that everyone's going to have a family dynamic that works really well for them in terms of their structure. So I do think you have to follow what feels right for you. You know, I have always, for a long time, I went to the gym before my kids got up in the morning. But now we'll go to the gym either at 10 a.m. in the morning or we'll go at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. You just have to create a structure that feels supportive to you and your way of life. Yeah. So I've cooked a curry. I need to go check that it's okay out there. So if no one has any questions, then I am going to wrap this up. So this live will stay out for a couple of days, and then maybe I'll leave it up for the rest of this launch, and then I will take it down and it will be inside Homeschool Freedom. My biggest advice to homeschooling, and it's always come back to this, is that what most women don't realize is the hardest bit is you. And everyone will say it's their kids, or like they don't listen, or, you know, how am I going to teach them? I just have never ever thought that I was the teacher. I have always thought like I'm the provider of the information, like I make it available, but how they choose to use it is just completely up to them. And I felt for me and my family that has worked really, really, really well. I don't think it's a universal approach. I don't think that's the approach that works well for everybody, but I feel that that approach has worked beautifully for my family, you know? And my kids are very happy and content with each other. Like they're not desiring to get away from each other, and they're not really fighting that much or anything. So I don't have a lot of challenges in that regard. They're very used to being with each other. But not everyone else is in that situation. If your kids have been in school for many years, they're actually not going to be used to being with each other, and I think they will fight for a while, and it does feel a bit stressful for a while as well, because they're just not used to each other. And there's also, like, I've noticed this thing with kids when they're coming from a school space, they have a very competitive mindset, and that's really dissolved for my kids over a long time. Is they're just not that competitive with each other anymore. They really know what everyone's strengths are. Like everyone respects what Seamus's knowledge is and what Aoife's knowledge is and what Saoirse's knowledge is. They all have varying forms of like, oh, you're really good at this. And so if someone wants to help them with something, it'll come from someone specific, you know? So Seamus is very good at tech, like very good at tech. So even just this morning when they all had a class together at 7 a.m. and Aoife's like, oh, she had some new headphones and she hadn't joined them to her iPad. She's just like, I was like, can't you just join them? And she was like, no, Seamus does these things. I don't do them. It's his job to connect my headphones to my iPad. And I was like, okay, but you probably could learn that yourself as well. But they know their strengths and they really let them be in those strengths. They don't fight over it. Like Saoirse is very creative for singing, and she plays the piano and she plays the guitar, and sometimes it's hell annoying because it's loud but everyone just respects that. They respect that that's her thing. And when we're playing music, she always knows who the artist is. She knows who, like, what the song is called. She just knows everything about music, and she loves reading about it and she talks about it, you know. Aoife is very creative in other ways, and then very physical as well. So like if someone needs help with one of those things, she'll help them out. And so as time has gone on, we now have torrential rain, if you can't hear it. As time has gone on, they've just really grounded themselves in what their skills are, and it's very beautiful to watch. But I'm going to make very clear that my kids have been homeschooled together for 8 years. They've spent most days of the week with each other in that space, and it's naturally evolved into that, but it wasn't like that at first, you know? There was a lot of competitiveness, especially between my older two, because there's not a lot of age gap. Okay, so choosing a curriculum, don't do it before you've pulled your kids out of school. If your kids are already out of school, I want you to think about philosophy more than curriculum and decide based on what you believe in. Yeah. A lot of the time, especially for older kids, if I'm coaching a mum through this, usually I get her to focus, this sounds kind of crazy because we focus so much on this when kids are little, but self-help skills with older kids really gets them into life. Like, are they doing washing? Are they doing cooking? Are they doing cleaning? Are they like, do not get these kids out of school and become their slave. Like, fuck that. You know, you've got them out of school so that they can learn life, and a lot of high schoolers especially have very poor or very low life skills, so we really want to work on that. And, you know, can they read a recipe? That's always the one that, like, if someone's coming to me and we're doing coaching about, like, starting kids on homeschooling, that's always the test. I'm like, can your kid follow a recipe from top to bottom? Like, can they cook something entirely from instructions? And I'll always say it to a coaching client. I'll be like, go and do this week. Ask them to either bake a cake or ask them to make a meal by following a recipe. And that will tell me, like, the results from that, like what the client comes back with their little WhatsApp voice or their message, like what actually happened from that will always indicate like where we want to choose to help our kids when we're homeschooling them. You know, sometimes kids will throw the cake tin at the wall because they just don't even know how to follow the process of a recipe, you know? Or they'll like throw the entire dinner in the bin because they burnt the meat, you know. And so then we're looking at like self-regulation and capacity, managing emotions, and how would we integrate that more into life. It's not actually through more book work. It's not going to be from sitting online and looking at a computer for 2 hours a day. If your kid is unable to, as an example, make spaghetti bolognese from beginning until end without losing their shit, we're going to look at other things that help them regulate themselves. Yeah. And that's going to come from you. Like, you're just going to gently guide them on this way, you know. And that's kind of the path that we'll always follow. So if you have older kids and you pull them out to homeschool them, your kind of first value to watch out for kids who can read and for kids who can do like beginner cooking is, can your kid follow a recipe? Because that will give you such a clear idea of where they are at. And even if your kid can read really, really well, it will blow your mind, because they will like, first, some kids can't even see the list of ingredients in a recipe. It will shock you. It's a fun test. If you have kids in school, you can also just like do this, because see where it ends up. Not can you make baked beans on toast, because that's not what we're asking. Can you follow a recipe from beginning until end? Anyway, younger kids, there's different things that we do to kind of work out where their emotional capacity is and whether they're ready to actually learn or not. So yeah, that's it for today. I think I'll do another live. The homeschool freedom course will be open until the 16th, I want to say, and then after that it will be closed until we reopen it. You are welcome to join. If you comment freedom once this is live, you will get sent the link for the course. Now in the course there is 7 modules, and then there would have to be, there is 8 like incredible bonuses. There's things about traveling with kids. There's why did I not get my list out? There's like dealing with other people's viewpoints, deciding on your curriculum, understanding the legislation. So I really break that down for you, and it's broken down in a very I want to say universal way. So it doesn't really matter where you live. I'm kind of teaching you the questions to ask to get the answers that you're desiring in terms of actual laws. I unpack a lot for Australia. Heads up, there's actually no laws really in Australia for home education. There's a lot of policy, actually not even that much policy. There's hardly anything. So whatever people are telling you is usually a load of shit. A load of lies that aren't even true. So there is, I'm going to do an interview with my big kids about what they think homeschooling is like and what they have liked about it, like just sharing things. So if you've got questions around that, feel free to send them through and I'll add that module in. I want to do another module more so just like very deeply on the relationship between parent and child when we homeschool, but I need to really unpack that out first. So, but there is a lot in there. There is more than enough for you to get started really easily and to also feel good about your choice and trust yourself and know yourself. And it's sort of like the confidence booster that you never knew you needed. So I love you. Go and do the thing. Be brave. And like I've said before, like every time I've chosen to do something like this, actually homeschooling my kids was like the biggest pinnacle I have ever experienced in my life. And it made everything in my life, starting my own business, doing brave things like being on social media, building like multiple businesses, showing up for multiple businesses, managing lots of staff, doing all those things was actually so much easier because I had decided to homeschool my kids. And anyone that's ever homeschooled their kids will know how much you have to advocate and speak clearly for what you need or what you want help with. And that flows through so well into every other part of your life. And it just made our life really, really fucking beautiful and amazing. Like, we were able to move countries with so much ease, and I never had to worry about what school my kids were going into. All I have to worry about is them having things to do, which now they're kind of old enough and they find a lot of their own things. So I love you. Please leave any questions below, and you can also send me a DM if you're wanting any more information about the course. Obviously, it goes so much deeper than what I can cover in a 35-minute live. There is multiple modules in there covering everything from laws, legislation, curriculum, personal philosophy, beliefs, ideas. There's worksheets for you. There's just everything you'll ever need to not only get started, but if you're already started, to help you feel really grounded in there. Love you.